Hey guys, still here, welcome to Wargame. Today in Wargame, Wonsan Harbor, 10v10 tactical, and we have a couple of guys who are going naval. Now, the guys who are going naval are not very experienced, and the guy who sent it in, Bardos, he just came out and said it. He says, hey, I've only played 47 battles, I'm still new to the game, so expect some mistakes. There were indeed some mistakes, and I want to highlight those in this particular replay / video. Which means I'm going to be using my favorite epic marker again, or the epic pen thing. No, I'm not affiliated with it, I just think it's really nice to be able to draw on screen and immediately point out what goes where and what my thinking is. So expect a little bit of that. Now, the Wonsan Harbor coastline is to some extent really favorable to ships, and others not so much. You have basically a couple of different areas that you can work with. You got the coastline over here, the actual harbor. These are difficult areas for ships to operate in. Because what's going on is that all of these containers, all of this stuff gets in the way. So as much as you would like to, for example, support a firefight that's happening between these buildings, you can't. Because most of the time, the containers will be in the way. Now, there are some exceptions. Sometimes you can sort of shoot between these stacks, but it's not easy. That's just one of the operations. The other one is either assaulting here, or trying to assault there. With, I'd say, Foxtrot, so this sector over here, being the more difficult of the two. Again, you got stacks and stacks and stacks of containers. So let's say that your ship over here is trying to support. It can not really do so. It can sort of engage units over here in this marked area. But everything inside of Foxtrot is, or Fedor or whatever you want to call it, it's pretty hard. Because of the container stacks, because of the cranes, because of, well, mostly this stuff here. That, and that. This is all getting in the way. So what you see happen frequently is firefights between these buildings here and there. And your ships cannot help. Moreover, your ships over here, near Fedor, are at grave risk. Because this tree line is usually quite dangerous. There can be anti-ship missile batteries parked there. Which means that if you have your ship over here, the anti-ship missile batteries can fire. And, well, 1 or 2 ships are usually very easily overwhelmed. And since it is a tactical, you can usually only ever buy 1 or 2 ships. So you have to be really picky about the type of ships that you're going to bring. You also have the river over here. It does extend all the way here, but I am kind of splitting it up into 2 sectors. Because, let me pause this for a sec. What you have over here is an area where, let's say, the larger riverine craft can go. But they cannot pass under this bridge. That thing over there, they cannot go there. The smaller ships, think Esther B90, think Monitor Zippo, they can get here. That really helps. Because from this position deeper up the river, they can actually support either that way, or they can support that way. But the rest of the ships that cannot go beyond this bridge, those are really not terribly useful. Now, I'm not saying they're useless, because it really depends on which way you're fighting and where the battle is going, and also what sort of ship you have. Because Blue 4 has the Baiku or the Baiknu, I always mispronounce this thing. And if you park it over here, it has an excellent anti-air radius. Something like that. And I'm going to suppose that aircraft are going to be coming out of this direction. So once you have your ship parked in this location here, you can then have a sort of no-fly zone created over Elena, or Echo, which means that troops coming in from over here are less likely to get airstriked, or airstruck, or whatever, assaulted from the air. So in some cases, these ships are very handy, and others not so much. Now, in reverse, you have the massive coastline over here at Anna. Again, you run into trouble over here because you got containers. So basically, this part is very, very hard for a ship to move through or to fire through. So your ship is assaulting like this. That's a really, it's a really slick boat, let's put it like that. They cannot assault this area. So basically everything like that you lose out on. But this area, the horizontal striped one, you can attack that. The question is, why would you want to? Because more often than not, the enemy is not really going to be coming in from here. Unless something has gone horribly wrong. But let's say that it's a fairly normal game. The enemy is going to be coming in from here, through the land route, and potentially through here. Now, as far as anti-ship batteries are concerned, I'd say that the tree line that I marked up previously over here is easier to use. Because right here, you just don't really have a lot of space. Let's say the enemy has a ship parked over here, and you want to sink it. You only could use anti-ship batteries from here, or, and let's just draw a sort of diameter line, or from here. And over here, they're vulnerable, so you gotta be really careful there. Anti-ship batteries can be very dangerous, but when they're this close to a ship, they're very easy to dislodge. Because a ship only really needs a couple of rounds, and, well, you can kiss your very expensive anti-ship battery goodbye. Sometimes I really consider the anti-ship battery to be a bit of a mistake. If you buy those, you have a weapon that you can use against a very select type of unit. It does work most of the time. But what do you do when the ships have been sunk? Because then you don't really have much. You just have a couple of, well, useless anti-ship batteries. If you use strike planes, anti-naval or anti-ship planes, you have usually a bit more options. Because with the anti-ship planes, you can still use them as, let's say, makeshift fighters. And some of them actually have really nice air-to-air missiles. So I'm usually more of a fan of anti-ship planes than anti-ship units, anti-ship batteries. Because they don't take up supplies, talking about the planes, they don't take up supplies, they just resupply automatically. And they can still be useful beyond just sinking the first ship. Now over here, we have a situation developing. I think here, Bardos is making his first mistake. The Jiangyu 3s are great ships. They have very good anti-missile defense. The Oliver Hazard Perry over here does not. It has, I believe, medium Sea-Wiz? Yeah, medium Sea-Wiz. These guys have good Sea-Wiz, sorry, very good Sea-Wiz in fact. And they have 32 defensive missiles in the form of the HQ-7s. The Perrys have the SM-1. Standard Missile 1 Block 5, and they have 16 of those. So they are going to be firing those pretty damn quick, and once they're out, they're only going to be falling back to their Sea-Wiz, which is really not that great. What you see happening over here is that these two Jiangyus have an advantage over this guy, so right now he should be on the offensive before the second Perry joins in, because then it's a 2-on-2. And then the Perrys start to combine their anti-missile defenses. Now the Perrys, I'm not even sure why Benji decided to go with Oliver Hazard Perrys, because I think that these ships are pretty shit. Sure enough, they got 16 harpoons, which looks like a lot. But there is something that the game does not tell you. And that's that the Oliver Hazard Perrys only have a single launcher, and it is over here on the bow. This launcher means that you fire your harpoon. And then, if I'm not mistaken, what happens in real life is that the launcher orients vertical, so it points straight up. A new missile is being lifted into the launcher from the magazine. The launcher swings once again horizontal, so towards the target, and fires another missile. Which means your rate of fire is really quite bad. And if you keep slinging one missile at a time at the enemy, well, it's very easy to just ignore it. They're very easy to intercept. The Jiangyus, by contrast, thank you for turning that ship around, they have quad launchers. They got one stack on the starboard side and one stack oriented towards the port side. Those can actually do quite a bit of work, because they fire missiles in pretty rapid succession. Now he has turned them off, which I quite like. There we go, a couple of missiles inbound from the Perrys. But just look at how easy these are to defeat. Are they even using their missiles? Yeah, they are. Mistake. He's firing 2 missiles. The Jiangyus are capable of firing ripple fire, which means that they fire almost all anti-ship missiles in one salvo. And then you suddenly have an overwhelm of the Perry's missile defenses. There's another missile and another one. Yeah, this is not great. Because now the Perrys can just as easily intercept those. They do get pretty close to the Perrys, but beyond that are not a great risk. Now they also have an LCU. The LCU keeps resupplying the Perrys, so they can keep firing harpoons until they run out and then the LCU runs out. Which, in case of 10,000 supplies, well, they last a fair amount of time. Now, one of his buddies, actually 2 of his buddies, both von Hindenburg and Sonny, were supposed to be helping him. What Sonny, I think, is going to do somewhere around the 17 or 20 minute mark is buy a Sovereign. A Sovereign is a 500 point warship. It is mostly oriented in a way that focuses on, well, defeating other warships and defending friendly assets. It has really nice anti-air missiles, which can also be used in a defensive role. And it has a couple of great guns on it, which can reach out and touch units from great range. Now, this is an interesting tactic by Rui. You see this quite a lot. If the enemy has ships, you send in a siege aircraft. The more range you have on the siege aircraft, the better, and I believe that the Raven is the best at 5.2 kilometer range. And what this does is inflict a little bit of damage on the Jiangyu 3. Currently, it injured the captain on the bridge. He's been killed. There goes the siege aircraft, though. But beyond that, well, you're going to need a lot of siege runs on these ships before they go down. But, in good news, the missiles cannot be dodged. No, actually, sorry, they can be dodged, but they cannot be shot down, is what I meant to say. They cannot be shot down. Now, what I don't quite get is why Sonny has a lot of assets over here, whereas he could be moving towards Fedor. In this case, I know that one of the Jiangyus has taken a bit of damage, but they're mostly operational. They're only fighting a bunch of Oliver Hazard Parries. In this case, I would try to relocate my ships from here, to the harbor. Because from this place, I know that I'm relatively safe against anti-missile batteries, or against missile batteries. And I can still support my allies, which means that all of this infantry over here can start moving up through the harbor. Under cover of my ships. And I know that I just mentioned that they're not that good at supporting. But, well, in my book, half of what the ships can do is just sort of panic the enemy. And I don't mean panic the troops. But when a player sees a bunch of large warships coming at them, sometimes they go, oh crap. And they just try to retreat with their troops. Because they know that once these guys start moving up, and once those ships actually get a look at your infantry, those dual PJ-33As, the 100mm guns that they have, they're going to inflict a lot of damage. Now, with just these 2 Jiangyu 3s over here, he's already sitting on 320 points. They're very expensive assets, and they currently don't do much. Now, he brings in a musket. Musket, for the uninitiated, is a coaster-class ship, which means it can be targeted by anti-ship missiles. It's got a couple of anti-ship missiles of its own, the Termit, and it has a Sea Whiz, which means it can intercept missiles. It might say that its own Sea Whiz is bad, but it has a dedicated Sea Whiz gun on the deck. You can, I believe, see it on the bow. Yeah, here. That little 30mm gun, 8,400 rounds. Don't even try to shoot it at aircraft. It might look like it'll do much. And sure enough, when it hits, it actually does do a fair amount of damage, but your range is 350 meters, which means you're not likely to ever get a good hit on them. What these things are excellent at is overwhelming the enemy. Had Bardos over here not bought 2 Jiangyus for 320 points, he could have gotten 6 muskets, which means 6 muskets times 4 missiles, is 24 missiles, and they fire those very quickly, which means you could immediately get rid of those, both of the Oliver Hazard parries. Once the Oliver Hazard parries are gone, his ally could then have moved up. With the Mi-17s, potentially with the infantry inside, depending on how risky he's feeling. And that would not only free up more of this area of the battlefield, but also use all of these assets, which are currently basically useless because they're just sitting there. They're not doing anything. Now, what you see happening over here is a bit of skirmishing. For some reason or another, the Oliver Hazard parries have put on their brave pants and are now pushing. Unfortunately, at this point, the Jangyus have run out of anti-ship missiles. And as you can see, the Oliver Hazard parries can intercept some missiles, but not all of those fired by the Moskit. And that was one Moskit. Just the one. And he was able to inflict almost a killing blow on one of the Oliver Hazard parries. Now you need to push. Fast. Get in there. And start gun-dueling those Oliver Hazard parries. Unfortunately, he's out of defensive missiles, so that could be a real problem. Means he just has to rely on the guns and the Sea-Whiz systems on the Jangyu 3. For some reason, these guns are really inaccurate. 25% accuracy only. I don't quite get that. You can have a 70% accuracy gun on a tank, but on a ship it's only 25%. And okay, maybe it makes some sort of sense because the ship is supposed to be rolling in the water, going back and forth, but beyond that, I thought even naval guns in this day and age were pretty stabilized. Come on, gift chase. Gift chase. The problem right here is that these parries, they're pretty soon going to be in this defensive bubble, which is put up by the ASM batteries, the anti-ship missile batteries, which could potentially be over there. Once these parries get in there, you don't really want to have your Jangyus too close. So you're going to have to be quite careful with these ships. But I'd say up to about this point, let's say this line here, you had a good opportunity to chase one down. And, well, especially the left one, he's very vulnerable. You could have sunk him. For some reason, though, you didn't. You just let him escape. And now he's going to be able to, depending on the supplies on the LCU over here, get repaired. Now, let's skip ahead a little bit. I'm not really going to focus on anything that happens in the town because I wanted to sheerly focus on naval elements. And what can go, well, what can go well and what can go better with these ships. This is really optimistic. He's sending in cargo trucks only to resupply ammunition, which I think is a good idea because trying to resupply a warship, or sorry, trying to repair a warship is an exercise in futility. It really doesn't work. Now just note how quickly these things are gone. And empty. He did resupply some of the main gun ammo. Beyond that, nothing. Let's see if this Jangyu is even going to get anything. No. And it's empty. So I think this Jangyu and potentially the Moskit is just immediately chewing through these cargo trucks. Resupplying these things from a cargo truck is basically useless. I know that it's tactical, so you don't have that many points available, but I would still try, especially if you have multiple players, to have one person, so one player on your squad, use a Muna, a resupply ship. Because those carry so much more than these cargoes can ever supply. And it's mobile. It means that you're not going to be stuck around this coastline. And you can actually make use of those on the move. So you could fall back to here, for example, and you can still get resupplied. Whereas right here, with the cargo trucks, you're just going to be stuck. Now, speeding up again a little more. Here we have the first anti-ship missile batteries. Let's see if I can find the location. I think they're over here. Here. So they're pretty aggressive positioned, but they can get away with it. Because they're pretty stealthy, those anti-ship missile batteries. And they have a lot of range, usually about 7.5 kilometers, depending on make and model. What this player is probably doing is firing a couple of missiles and then moving right back. So you can then expect those things to be, let's say, on the way back towards the fob. That is a really big arrow. There, that's a little better. So, in this case, there's not really that much that he can do. Had these been 6 muskets, I think the outcome would still have been pretty much the same, because they are, well, relatively capable of defending themselves, but again, not great. He might have lost 1 or 2 muskets, but the Oliver Hazard parries, which I think are currently the culprits, they're the ones who were spotting for the anti-ship batteries. Well, those guys would be dead, which means there would not be any spotter. Now there goes 1 Oliver Hazard parry in a big ball of fire. Highlights another problematic element here. Ships explode, and they explode quite violently. So what you saw happen here was that this ship had about an explosive radius of that, leaving this parry to be very, very much inside the explosive radius of that ship, and as such, it took quite a bit of damage, and probably got panicked, meaning that all of its weapon systems are going to be less effective. Now, why exactly you want to bring in a Sovereign beyond ego, I don't really know. This is a 500 point investment that you are never going to recoup. There goes the second parry. Sure enough, von Hindenburg did get 333 points. I believe the parries are 160 each. I didn't quite look at that when I was looking at the stats. He's spent 500 points and made 320. Or, well, 333, but 333 is such a weird number that I think he already got attributed some napalm damage. A Sovereign is 500 points. You could do a lot with 500 points. If the muskets would be capable of sinking the parries, then a couple of cheaper ships would be capable of supporting a potential naval incursion into Fedor. Right now, what he could be facing is, if he wants to recoup his investment, a CV and a bunch of anti-air units, and that might get him to 500 points. But keep in mind that this guy probably, for the majority of the battle, has done nothing. He sat there, and I gotta admire his patience, he sat there for the first 15 minutes of the game. Let's see if that's true. Yep, he sat there for the first 15 minutes of the game and bought a Sovereign. So he is very high on the self-control and on not actually spending anything and just waiting his time, biding his time to get a Sovereign. Now the Sovereign, they do have a nice anti-airplane missile at 4.5 kilometer range. If you park it, let's say, Jesus again. If you park it, let's say here, you're going to be making a pretty large no-fly zone. All of this is where planes really don't want to go, but the enemy has already shown that they have anti-ship missiles, and a lot of them. What? Okay. I didn't even see this in my previous go over with the replay. This guy has a Redoute. Redoute do amazing amounts of damage. That's 200 points of damage. And they are very accurate missiles. The problem is, you only fire 1. And that is going to be the problem, because that 1 missile might do a lot of damage, if it hits. If it gets intercepted, then you have a very expensive 60-point missile battery sitting there doing jack shit, because they don't hit. And there goes your 200 points of damage right into the water. So this is absolutely the wrong type of naval unit to buy. It really doesn't help anybody. Now, the Sovereign is pushing up. I personally would let the musket go first, because if the musket is capable of absorbing, or at least sniffing out where the anti-ship batteries are, then that would be a lot safer to sacrifice a 60-point scout than a 500-point scout. Beyond that, it is tempting to leave a Jiangyu behind, but don't. Always bring the entire fleet. Because this Jiangyu, sure enough, it might pose as a big security risk because it's going to get easier, or it's going to be killed off easier. At the same time, if you leave it alone, it is definitely going to get killed. Because, well, ships have this sort of big shoot me sign, and people really love sinking ships. So what you'll see happen is that people want to try and sink that lonely ship. And that means that it's going to be a pretty big risk. Now, still going on. See, now I have 500 points in the water doing not much of anything. There goes the Sovereign. Now it's pretty much waiting until... Oh. There goes once again a Raven. Taking out the wounded Jiangyu 3. Now this ship is quite far away from the rest of the fleet, so the rest of the fleet's not impacted at all. If you want to call 3 ships a fleet, maybe we should call it a squadron. This is really the right time to start loading up your troops. Or is he pushing through the harbor? Sonny. Yeah, he is. Nachmachon, dead. Capture that. Oh, it's empty. Okay, sink it then. It's a 75-point ship. Okay, so what are you going to do now? It can be intimidating to have a Sovereign off your coast, but if you don't have any units over here, you can safely ignore it. Because what the enemy has over here is a 660, 720 point investment. Which means that, let's say that they had bought Spetsnaz with a vehicle. I believe you can get Spetsnaz for about, what, 40 points, including a vehicle? So let's say 720 points is 18 Spetsnaz squads. So while you could be controlling the naval area over here, you could also be pushing in with 18 Spetsnaz squads and just bulldozering Elena and going right into Gregory. That's why I'm always a bit hesitant about getting something this big. Oh, here's the Sea Buster. See, the Sea Buster, there's probably a lot of them. The Sea Busters actually carry more than one missile. They're not as deadly. They only do 80 points of damage, but they fire 6. Which means that when you see these things firing, there's likely always going to be 1 or 2 missiles that actually hit the ship. Let's say that 2 missiles hit the ship for 120 points of damage. This thing only has 150. And that's 1 missile battery for 85 points. So you're gonna make the trade, and you're gonna come out on top as well. Now, what I would ideally see is a bigger naval invasion. Not just 1 U-King, but more. Oh, that's a big mistake. Ho ho! Musket. All the Sea Busters fired. Good luck resupplying that. That's going to take a lot of supplies. And this is exactly what I was hoping for. And potentially that Bardos was also hoping for. That the musket would serve as a sort of lightning rod, absorbing all the missile fire, while not really taking any kind of serious damage. I mean, sure enough, the musket sank, but it means that the Sovereign could live. Let's see, he's... Where are you going? Raven. Yep, Raven doesn't care. It landed 1 missile, but note how little damage it actually did. It's 1 pip of the health bar, that's all. Yep. And now we only have 1 Spetsnaz group. And Commandosi. MI8T. ATGM infantry in there. Commandosi just casually crossing the bridge. Okay. At this point the battle is pretty much over. 1750, 34, 40, 55. So there's not that much going on. What I'm really curious about is what did red... No, sorry, what did blue have? What did Blue 4 send in? I'm going to open up the replay again in a minute or two. And then actually have a look at that. What I still want to highlight is what ideally I would do if I had a couple of friends and we were all going naval and we were all going to assault this area. Let's say there's 4 of us. If there's 4 of us, then that means that there's 6 people who can actually control all of that. So the 4 of us, we're going to start making moves towards Fedor, or Foxtrot, or whatever it's called in this current mode. I would have probably 6 muskets, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And with that, I can engage any warship and sink it immediately. So initially that would mean that the Oliver Hazard Perrys would go down. Second, it would mean that any ship that gets spawned in after that, and of course the muskets do have to be resupplied, beyond that, any ship that spawns in immediately gets killed off, which is a big no-no. Blue does not want to start spawning in more ships because they immediately die. It doesn't mean that they don't spawn in ships, because there's usually that one special player on your team who, I don't know, lacks awareness, let's say, and immediately starts spawning in big warships. If even a Congo spawns for 420 points, you can kill that with 6 muskets pretty easily. Now the 6 muskets also make sure that your ships, other ships, don't really have that much to fear. Because what these things can do is intercept most missiles, especially between the 6 of them. I would then have another player, ideally, with a bigger ship. I'm not saying the biggest, but a bigger. So let's say a a Jiang Yu 3. 2 of those. And they can shut down this whole area. This just gets neutralized. Which means that the spawn in Fedor is neutral. And that enemy reinforcements are going to come in from Gregory. At that point, we have 2 players who have dedicated their forces. Let's say I was using the muskets and somebody else is using the Jiang Yus. Then we have 2 players left. One could provide, ideally, a fighter or 2. So you can have a combat air patrol pretty much over here, just circling, making sure that whatever is happening over here does not get attacked, and that the ships don't get attacked by sea aircraft, because you can bet your ass that they're going to try that. And then the 4th player, and maybe some more points from the 3rd player, they're going to amphibiously assault this area. Blah, that's supposed to be an arrow. Amphibious assault, not an aerial assault. Because you don't know what's in here. These buildings here can be very dangerous. If there's AA in there and you just fly in, well, your helicopters are going to go crashing here, 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 and there goes your assault. And with that assault failing, all of these assets become useless. So that means that you're gonna have to go with a naval offensive, like you Kings, the one you see over here, and potentially supporting warships. I believe that there was a Schmel here sometime. Yeah. Sorry about that. The Schmel is still here. The Schmel can support at good range with a rocket artillery. Does not do little damage either. That's 8 HE that you're bombarding an area with. They can do that at 28,000 meter range, aka 28 kilometers, which means you can fire all the way across the map. And if you want to get closer, I wouldn't recommend it, but you can use those dual type 2M, 3Ms to fire at enemy aircraft and helicopters. So that's how I would approach an offensive over here. Now I'm daring you guys to try it. I don't play Wargame that much lately, but I am kind of eager to try. If you guys want to do so yourself, by all means, send me the replay of how that is going to go down. Because I think that could be a very, very interesting replay. Now, I'm going to fire the replay up again and see what Blue exactly had. Because I saw that Sonny had all of his forces parked in, well, the Red 4 sector of the harbor. So let's say Alpha here. Was the threat warranted? Was his fear warranted? Was there actually no... or let's say, was there a defense in Foxtrot? And of course, it's easy to have hindsight like this. There you go. There's nothing. There is nothing, Sonny. Push to contact, man. Sure enough, an Oliver has a parries a nasty ship to work against. But your helicopters, and you're in. Done. You could immediately wipe out the command, because they are command helicopters, for crying out loud. They're not even command infantry. Sure enough, it's being brought in by container, by the looks of it. But this is something you spot easily and kill. This is something you spot easily and kill, and this is not capable of defending itself. So, push to contact. Do not drop off here, Sonny. Pick those guys up, get them back on the helos. Drop them off here, because 30 Commandosi, well, they're just going to chew through these guys like there's no tomorrow. You deploy your own command, and you got Fox. And then you start bringing in your own assets, just from a threatening angle at Gregory. And usually, that can cause quite a few Blue 4 players, in this case, to start surrendering. Right, with that, I'm going to wrap up the video. I hope you guys found this useful. I'm definitely going to be trying this attack plan on Foxtrot. And, well, I would really like to see how you guys do. So if you have a couple of buddies, and if you don't, then by all means, come over to my Discord. And you can try it there, because there's usually people playing in the evenings. At least that's the European evening times. Let me know how this assault's going to go out, or how it's going to work. And if you have a reverse assault, so you're coming in from Fox and you're going to Alpha, I'm also interested in looking at it. Because I think that the naval element is something that is underappreciated, and that can still make a really big difference. Alright, thank you guys for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I shall see you guys soon for the next video.